Who's Afraid of Little Old Me by Taylor Swift. Today I'm returning to the Tortured Poets department and this particular track, Who's Afraid of Little Old Me. Now, I think this is one of the more divisive tracks on the album, with some critics rating it very high as one of the best tracks on the album, indeed one of the best songs of the year, and others rating it much lower. I'll leave my general comments about the song until the end. So let's jump right in to Who's Afraid of Little Old Me.
The who's who of who's that is poised for the attack.
The who's who of who's that. There's a kind of irony here. The who's who is a list of, the really important people in the world, the people who've made a contribution, at least according to that publication. But on the other hand, who is that? Who is that person anyway? There's kind of the two sides of the coin in that. Someone who at least regards himself as important. And they're on the attack. And I don't think anybody can deny that for all of the adulation, adoration that Taylor Swift attracts, she attracts an almost equal level of hatred from some people. It's completely bizarre to me, but that seems to be the way it is. And no one can deny that she's been constantly under attack and that she's constantly under scrutiny. And obviously this song is to some extent addressing that issue. She can't scratch her bum without it making headlines somewhere. And there always seem people who are just ready to be so vicious, whether they're actually members of the media or just people watching YouTube videos. This streak of cruelty that runs through people's commentary on Taylor Swift's life and her music. I said I was going to leave general comments until the end, but I guess it's difficult not to comment on this right at the very beginning.
The who's who of who's that is poised for the attack. But my bare hands paved their paths. You don't get to tell me about sad.
My bare hands paved their path. There's something of I did it with my bare hands here. There's something of a claim here by Taylor. I did this with my own bare hands. But I think it's probably fair to say that her success is the thing that provokes these attacks. And you don't get to tell me about sad. I remember watching, I think it was a video by Rick Beato, who's a music producer, has a YouTube channel. And every so often he goes through the top 10 songs on Spotify and comments on them. And on one occasion, one of the songs on that was I Can Do It With a Broken Heart by Taylor Swift. And one of his comments was, I thought, very nasty, aimed at Taylor when he said, what do you have to be sad about? What do you have to be depressed about? And I think this is a response to that kind of comment. You don't get to tell me about sad. The idea that someone in her position, with her success and her popularity, can't be depressed, can't be sad. What a ludicrous and offensive idea that is.
You don't get to tell me about sad. If you wanted me dead, you should have just said.
There is such a viciousness in some of the attacks that it must sometimes feel as though people actually want to physically harm her.
If you wanted me dead, you should have just said. Nothing makes me feel more alive.
I think this is one of the lines that Taylor says to herself. Nothing makes me feel more alive than being attacked in this way. I don't believe her. I'm sorry, but I think it actually really hurts her and really upsets her. And I think she really struggles with this and struggles to get over it and get past it. But this is one of the things that she says to herself in order to cope with it.
Nothing makes me feel more alive. So I leap from the gallows and I levitate down your street.
I absolutely love this image. The lyrics here take me back to the Reputation era when she decides to embrace her critics' view of herself. And in recent times, particularly by the wacky evangelical Christians of America, they've been trying to claim that Taylor Swift is a witch. First of all, I couldn't care less if she's a witch. That's great. But what she does here is she embraces this image of herself, of the witch coming down from the gallows and floating down the street. I think that is a beautiful image. Kind of a Carrie-like image too, of getting revenge on the people who have been attacking her. Now, there's no doubt at all that this is an angry song and that it was written when she was angry. No doubt in my mind at all. Hence why I've called this video Taylor Swift Unhinged. I think this is a little bit of Taylor Swift being unhinged that she's showing to the world.
So I leap from the gallows and I levitate down your street. Crash the party like a record scratch as I scream. Who's afraid of little old me? You should be.
First of all, that is a great scream. I love the way she jolts the listener out of their complacency at this point. It's been a fairly even, level delivery, and then she just screams, "Who's afraid of little old me?" This image of a record scratch, I've struggled a little bit with that, understanding quite what she means. I guess she doesn't mean just the little clicking noise that a record makes, that a needle makes as it goes across a scratch, but rather the scratching sound of it happening. There's something like the sound of nails down a blackboard about this. And again, this is defiant Taylor. She embraces this image of herself as a witch and she just crashes right in on their party. She takes the fight right to them, as jarring and as discordant as that may be. And then, of course, there's this whole idea of who's afraid of little old me, which kind of recollects Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. Again, this image of a deranged woman, the mad woman. Society doesn't cope well with a mad woman. Again, she's embracing this. You should be afraid. I'm very dangerous.
Who's afraid of little old me? You should be. Was contained, the bullet had just grazed. At all costs, keep your good name. You don't get to tell me you feel bad.
Now, I'm not going to go into whatever particular scandal this might be referring to. It can refer to any number of things, and not even only to Taylor Swift's life, but to the scandal in any celebrity's life. On this occasion, she's saying it was just a graze and she recovered from that. But again, you don't get to tell me you feel bad. You don't get to do these things and say these things and then just tell me you feel bad about it. I guess this is expressing something about the inadequacy of apologies, really. You can't really undo the harm once it's done just by apologising. There's also the line about keeping your good name. There's all this pressure for her to maintain the image of America's sweetheart. And anything that reveals a crack in that image is going to be a point of attack for people. But I guess she's saying here that she's not prepared to pay the price of maintaining that image. If she wants to ruin her reputation, she will. And we get that feeling again in But Daddy, I Love Him.
The scandal was contained. The bullet had just grazed. At all costs, keep your good name. You don't get to tell me you feel bad. Is it a wonder I broke? Let's hear one more joke. Then we could all just laugh until I cry.
Again, Taylor's emphasising the cruelty of the attacks here, the jokes made at her expense, the obvious attempts to bring her down, the cruelty that's involved. And although Taylor's obviously speaking from her own experience here, I don't think that she's only referring to that. I mean, we can think of any number of celebrities, particularly female celebrities, who are constantly under attack for things that they do or say. And there seems to be nothing behind it but cruelty.
Is it a wonder I broke? Let's hear one more joke. Then we could all just laugh until I cry. So I leap from the gallows and I levitate down your street. Crash the party like a record scratch as I scream. Who's afraid of little old me?
I like the way here she doesn't scream it. It's one of the things that Taylor does in her songs is she always varies it. She varies the chorus, she varies her delivery. So it's never just a question of cut and paste. It doesn't become monotonous.
I was tame, I was gentle till the circus life made me mean.
Here she switches metaphors now from this idea of being a witch to being a caged animal. And it must surely feel sometimes like that, surrounded as she is by bodyguards and paparazzi all the time.
I was tame, I was gentle till the circus life made me mean. Don't you worry, folks, we took out all her teeth. Who's afraid of little old me? Well, you should be, you should be, you should be. You should be, you should be, you should be. So tell me everything is not about me, but what if it is?
This takes me back a little bit to Antihero from the Midnights album with the idea of her being a narcissist, and here she's expressing that again to some extent. So tell me everything isn't about me, but what if it is? That nagging suspicion that it is about her.
So tell me everything is not about me, but what if it is? Then say they didn't do it to hurt me, but what if they did?
Well, I think I've made it clear from what I've been saying here that I think that often the aim of critics, whether they're in the media or just YouTube viewers, their aim is seriously to hurt. I have no doubt in my mind about that. That is the aim. It is to hurt.
Then say they didn't do it to hurt me, but what if they did? I wanna snarl and show you just how disturbed this has made me. You wouldn't last an hour in the asylum where they raised me. So all you kids can sneak into my house with all the cobwebs.
She puts a snarl into her voice while she's singing these lyrics. This reminds me also of I Can Do It With a Broken Heart, where we have the public image, the performer, and yet underneath this is the broken heart. And here you have the public image, the nice all-American girl, but underneath she's become very disturbed. She's raised in an asylum. So all you kids can sneak into my house with all the cobwebs. This is one of those lines on the Tortured Poets Department where Taylor actually seems to target even her fans with her criticism. That the fans feel as though they can get into her life in some way. But inside there are the cobwebs. Now, this also reminds me of another song. I I can't remember which album it's from. It's one of the bonus tracks on one of her albums. It's called Right Where You Left Me, where she describes herself sitting at this table in a restaurant and basically becomes covered in cobwebs. She's been there so long. And this in turn reminds me of the image from Great Expectations of Miss Havisham, and with her house, which has been left the same since her wedding day, and everything is covered in cobwebs. So there's a sense in which Taylor is enclosed in this house covered in cobwebs. Again, this contrast with the external image. And she doesn't want anyone, she doesn't want even her fans to invade her privacy to that extent.
I wanna snarl and show you just how disturbed this has made me. You wouldn't last an hour in the asylum where they raised me. So all you kids can sneak into my house with all the cobwebs. I'm always drunk on my own tears. Isn't that what they all say?
Of course, one of the criticisms of Taylor Swift's songs is they're all breakup songs. They're all poor old me, poor little me kind of songs. But in a way, I guess this is another one of those songs. Now, I think I've looked at enough songs on this channel now to show that that isn't in fact always true. But even if it is, that's such a rich vein to explore, isn't it? And it's what songwriters and poets and novelists and movie makers have been doing now for thousands of years. So why shouldn't she do it?
I'm always drunk on my own tears. Isn't that what they all say? That I'll sue you if you step on my lawn.
I've never had a sense that Taylor Swift was actually very litigious. Correct me if I'm wrong. Of course, she protects herself. She has to do that.
That I'll sue you if you step on my lawn. That I'm fearsome and I'm wretched and I'm wrong.
I think she probably is fearsome. I think in a way that's what she's expressing in this song. Or maybe there's a little touch of irony here. Is she wretched? Sometimes, certainly. Is she wrong? Sometimes, certainly.
That I'm fearsome and I'm wretched and I'm wrong. Put narcotics into all of my songs.
Again, this is one of my favourite lines from this song because, again, it's usually the wacky evangelical Christians who think that she weaves spells or something into her song that entrances people. Well, here she's kind of embracing that, although using the image of narcotics instead, that there's something in her songs that's addictive, and there is something in her songs that's addictive. They're usually very catchy, they have great melodies, they have great lyrics. It's no wonder that people sing them all the time. But people interpret that in some sinister way.
Put narcotics into all of my songs. And that's why you're still singing along.
Yep, singing along even to this song.
So I leap from the gallows and I levitate down your street. Crash the party like a record scratch as I scream. Who's afraid of little old me? I was tame, I was gentle till the circus life made me mean. Don't you worry, folks, we took out all her teeth. Who's afraid of little old me? Well, you should be, you should be, you should be. 'Cause you lured me, you hurt me, and you taught me. You caged me, and then you called me crazy. of little old me.
So there we have it, Who's Afraid of Little Old Me by Taylor Swift. Now, I've already said a lot about the song while I was listening to it there. I guess I've expressed some very strong ideas, perhaps stronger than I thought I would when I began. In a way, I'm not necessarily defending what Taylor says in this song or advocating on her behalf. I'm trying to understand what it is that she is trying to express here and what experience she's trying to express. Now, the Tortured Poets Department, the anthology, is not an easy album to listen to. It takes real work, and one of the reasons it does so is because of songs like this. There's no doubt in my mind that this is a very raw song. It's one that Taylor wrote on her own, just at the piano, as I understand it. And there's no doubt in my mind that it expresses a great deal of anger and frustration with not a lot of filtering. It's kind of ironic and maybe paradoxical that Taylor wants to maintain some degree of privacy. She doesn't want the kids breaking into her cobwebbed home. And yet at the same time, she can't resist putting her soul, her heart, right out there on the page, on the airways, for everyone to see. This is a paradox that I guess I wrestle with listening to Taylor, and maybe she wrestles with herself as well. So it's a difficult album to listen to. It really does take work, and this song's not an easy song to listen to. I remember the first time listening to Tortured Poets Department, there was this song, there was But Daddy I Love Him, there was I Can Do It With a Broken Heart, and maybe others, which, while I was listening to them, made me feel really uncomfortable. And they still do make me feel uncomfortable to some extent. And I guess that's one of the reasons for writing them and keeping them on the album. So I can really appreciate the lyricism of this song, the imagery that she uses. I can appreciate the passion and honesty, uncomfortable honesty of the lyrics, while at the same time wrestling with that kind of paradox that she so often shows us her private self while at the same time wanting to keep herself private. It's a difficult line that she walks, and maybe sometimes she crosses it on the wrong side from time to time. I can see why this song and I can see why this album divides people. I would venture to say, though, that that's also a sign of great art, that it's sometimes disturbing. Taylor hints at narcissism here in this song. Is it all about me? Maybe it is, as she does in Antihero. And that makes me feel uncomfortable, honestly. I don't want to think of Taylor as a narcissist. And yet at the same time, there's something positive about it if she recognizes this streak within herself and if she's prepared to tackle it head on. I don't know. Even now, listening to it as I'm going through it, even as I'm trying to understand what she's saying and why she's saying it, it still does make me feel uncomfortable. I'm trying to be honest here in my assessment of the song, as I think Taylor's trying to be honest in the song as well. Please let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you struggle with this song as well? Do you find yourself trying to justify Taylor in this situation? Do you acknowledge the flaws in her personality as she seems to do? Does her revealing of these flaws and of her innermost feelings make you feel uncomfortable? Do you sense that kind of contradiction between expressing these ideas so publicly and yet wanting to remain private? Do you struggle with that as well? Let me know. I'd love to hear from you.